So let's settle in and arrive. I need some stretching right now. Let go of the tensions of the morning. But you know yourself and what you have to do. I'm gonna move a little bit. Maybe you need to melt on your chair. Take a few breaths. But regardless, I would advise feeling into all of the body and connecting with it. Movement or just inhabiting it, or breath. We haven't done this for a while. I want to invite you to reflect on the intention that you're coming in with. What is it that you hope to achieve? One, from our session today. Second, from the book club in general. And then from your path at large. What's the most meaningful thing for you about this path? What comes up as you settle into the heart? Collect all of the body mind's tensions and energy around it. What is the goal? What is the highest vision for yourself? And as you contemplate this goal, this vision, see if there's a felt sense associated with it. What it's like to already have this goal, even if it's 5% of it. Maybe it's peace, comfort, pleasure, aliveness. Of course, any quality works, whatever is yours. As you find its signature in your body, you tune into it, allow it to amplify. Allow yourself to fall into it. It's not so much putting energy into it as it is giving yourself to it, inviting it in, being grateful for it. Maybe you take a big breath and see which parts of the body are not yet being touched by this quality. Maybe they're holding some tension from before. We're not trying to make the tension go away. This is just an invitation. And really let yourself take up space inside, within this quality, as if you've just started a beach vacation and there's 2 weeks ahead of you where you have to do nothing besides relax into it. And if anything comes up and says, oh, but I don't have 2 weeks, the home, maybe it's still part of my work day, I have some more tasks later. Try to invite it to be this way, even for just another minute. Maybe we can let go of all of the tensions and pressing issues for just another minute. Breathing deep and enjoying the quality that we associate with victory on this path, just for now. Just for another 30 seconds. Now, from here, without opening your eyes, want to have a little experiment that will allow us to segue into today's chapter. I want you to imagine that happy place can be the beach, a vacation home, can be paragliding, can be playing a video game. Imagine some setting. And don't put too much effort into it, but try to make it as real as you can. Smells and sights, feelings, sounds. Just visualize and develop it in your mind. Just for another 10, 20 seconds. And the question that I want to explore a little bit before we jump in is, feel free to jump in with an answer whenever. What is the difference between what's happening right now in your imagination and reality?
It's sort of like seems like there is this notion that what we call reality is somehow separate from that which we call imagination, and like that's how it's different. But I can't really put my finger on it beyond that. I don't know if this makes sense, but
What's the difference? What is the difference?
well, there doesn't seem to me that there is any difference other than I wake up, I see the same room every day. I remember seeing this room yesterday, so therefore this is something different than what I can imagine and sort of like what comes up and arises in the mind's eye or something that happens when I'm dreaming.
Hmm. So your answer
And
is there's no difference.
yeah, that there
So
isn't. Well, it's interesting because when you dream, for example, you can often forget what your room looked like. So it's kind of interesting to just like realize it like 1 minute ago, I didn't remember who I was, where I was, at least where I was. But then I open my eyes and I recall, oh yeah, it's this again. So yeah, it seems like there's a reason to say that there is no difference.
hmm. Any other takes?
For me, it's just intuitive knowing. Like I know that this is blue and this is red. I I seem like I always had this knowing, this intuitive differentiation between real and imaginary. Maybe something I don't know. I learned when I was a baby and I don't remember it, but it's
Mhm.
just is.
Yeah. So I'm not asking about how you can differentiate between imagination and reality. I'm asking what is the difference?
For me, this is the difference. I feel this is real, and this is
Hmm.
not. This is the
Yeah.
difference. I
The
don't see
feeling.
any other difference.
Hmm.
Well, for me,
Any
Perhaps.
other
there's
takes?
the like imagination. It's like a memory of a sense input. It's like I can remember like the echo of how the plants smelled when I was on a hike the other day. I can remember the feeling of the warmth of the sun on my face. Uh, but there's no seeming external input. It's like hearing an echo.
Hmm.
I mean, imagination is like I imagine a thing, and then the longer I imagine it, the larger it gets, and like everything around the thing kind of adjusts to it. I don't know if it makes sense. Like I look at something, and the world morphs around it, and then I look at something else in the world, and the world morphs around it again. And reality seems more constant. Like the things are there. I don't know. Like if you ever looked at text in a dream, it's like it's more fluid, and I can
Hmm.
imagine one thing, and like it's much more responsive to what I feel inside myself. Yeah, with
Yeah.
reality, it stays mostly the same.
Let's also add a question. Where does imagination happen versus where reality happens?
I mean, it's the same place.
So the reason I'm bringing up this question and from the perspective of today's chapter is that in many ways it's the same. Or you could even say in every way that matters, it's the same. In the chapter, I used the concept of a virtual world that the mind spins up. Even saying, in accordance with our previous discussion, even saying the mind spins up can be superfluous, because the virtual world itself is the mind. The mind is the virtual worlding or the modeling. And then the only difference between imagination and reality for most people is our imagination is less rich. Imagination doesn't have the same level of resolution, of sophistication in terms of how much it can capture in the model. And that's mostly because our world building or the same process underlying what we call imagination is busy constructing the virtual model of reality that's constantly ongoing. And the reason that it's doing that is it just has many more demands on the mechanisms of mind that are tied deeply with our survival mechanisms. We're continuously vigilant in terms of what's happening in our surroundings so that we can be attuned to danger and to anything that's useful for survival. And so in some sense, our model of being, model of the world, or the virtual world that's being constructed, is being done so compulsively. And I'm not necessarily saying compulsively in a bad way, right? It's a feature. The robustness of this sense of reality of this world model is very crucial. We wouldn't want to have the same experiences in a dream with text morphing around if I'm being chased by a lion, right? I don't want to know exactly where he's coming from. But then what's important to understand is that this is all continuously, moment by moment, spun up by the same mind that works when we're trying to imagine something, or that works when we have a memory come up, or when we're dreaming. It's just a question of phenomenological richness. Now, why is that important? Again, in the context of this chapter, Spinning in Samsara, what I'm calling bits of information, sensory bits or mind atoms, coming in continuously through the senses, are the thing that constrains the range of imagination, the degree to where the world model can go. Where with imagination, we're less constrained. But the claim that I'm making is the more our model is distant from what's coming in through the senses, and the more that it's not aligned with dharmic principles, the more we experience friction with reality, and the more there's tension and agitation in our bodies and minds. I see everyone thinking really hard, so maybe let's take a pause here and talk about this for a bit.
So if the model is not aligned with reality and dharmic principles, those are two separate points, then we experience friction and we're spinning in samsara more. Okay. So in that case, like when you say aligned with reality, what is it that we're aligning with? I mean, we're discovering it as we go.
Yeah.
So it means sophisticated model of reality that is not kind of whimsical or too basic. Is that what you mean?
So you can there's two ways you can have less friction. One is to peel off, remove as many of the layers of the model as possible, which is what we sometimes do with psychedelics or other substances, right? To the point where we can just be like this. We don't know that we have any activity that's possible for us. We are barely cognizant of what we're perceiving. It's just this open to experience, and so there's no friction. The other way, which also generally implies not having many world models online and spinning, but still having some, is to have those that are online more aligned with fundamental consciousness. Meaning it's less constructed based on assumptions, based on what's called ignorance or taints. Concepts that we've explored before. I don't know if we will go into them right now. But just to mention in this context, the higher the basis of operation we're in, as we've defined those, the more we can start aligning becoming coordinators with fundamental consciousness. Every base of operation is an approximation of fundamental consciousness. In some sense, the path of waking up is more the shaving off layers of the samsaric spinning, of the model within model within model. And the growing up is creating models that are more sophisticated in their ability to collaborate versus come together in conflict and friction. Which is why I sometimes like using the term expansion, dissolution for waking up, and development complexification for growing up. But that doesn't really, that's not a catchy name. So it's probably not going to catch on. Yeah, Sophie.
I feel like this type of topic always can get a little bit trippy because of you start like going very deep into the construction and you don't see, like, sometimes it feels like dream, imagination, real life, it all feels indeed the same. And then indeed you have the power to construct your own models of the world. Like you do notice that you are the one that is making those things happen. It starts blurring this fine line to, like, or at least maybe this has been my fear. Could I lose the grip on being fully present in consensus reality? Because when you were asking about what's the difference between imagination and reality, I was like, well, for me, real is like the consensus real, you know? And that is also subjective, because sometimes you're like with one person and then like you start seeing things the same way and stuff like that. But yeah, but there is something that we all can agree is what is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you often agree with everyone about what's happening? Because that's not my experience.
That's exactly, that's the reason why I said it's like there is, but there is this fine, that's why I said there's this really fine line in which, as I said, it starts getting very trippy, because you're like, okay, what's really the thing? But I think, for example, there are people who imagine that they are dating a celebrity, right? And they send them like letters and everything. And the celebrity's like, oh no, another crazy person. I'm clearly not dating you. So I'm like, okay, this person went too far and like it lost the consensus reality. You know, they're not dating Madonna or whatever, you know? So and like everyone can see, okay, that person is clearly not dating Madonna, you know? So I think there are some things, but yeah, there are many that you're like also the same. Like I don't know what I don't know what's going on in my mind. I don't know what's going on in everyone's minds. And like then you look at it from different angles and you can see different realities. So I think it's a spectrum, but there is, where do you draw the line, and do you have to draw the line?
Well, you know, as people going this path, we try not to decide on ultimate lines drawn anywhere, right? That's just another layer of this is how it is that then constrains ourselves for the next layer of world that we're building. So it's about ultimately, and this is why I like talking about this so much. This path is about self-knowledge and self-trust, rather than try to go out into external authorities and rules and regulations and lines. You learn to trust yourself and see, oh, wait, am I being a little crazy right now? Am I the one who's driving on the opposite side of the right? Yeah.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is, and then the question, okay, so what you're saying is that the answer is like, you're like deep inside, you know, and I think and then there's no need for lines, you know, but does that apply to all type of brains? Like I can see how there are certain type of brains that might not, their like trust might not be well attuned.
Right. It's a path of learning to trust yourself. And the fewer the models that are online based on old karma and not aligned with the Dharma, the more we can trust ourselves to see reality clearly in the moment. when we get to a point where it's very clean and clear, let's use those words, knowing that you're all right is not different than how it feels like to dance with people. You're in a ballroom and you're dancing with people and everyone's having fun around you, and sometimes you start being in contact with a person. You're not asking yourself about lines, or at least not too much, right? You're not spinning up some world and then seeing yourself through it. Or if you are, maybe it's just for a moment. Oh, do I want to dance closer with this person? Oh, did I touch them inappropriately? Right? For the most part, you're just in the dance, and the movement itself, the felt sense in the immediate moment, is informing you about how to move.
Yeah, totally. I think I get it. And I think this, like, I feel that for me, I think that is pretty clear. I think as a prescription for like everyone, that I'm just curious how much does this take into account the variation in like not just mental illness, but just abilities in like picking up social cues or just like attunement to reality. There are people who are not in this path that like would struggle with like, oh, like what do you describe about dancing? Be like, oh, I don't get it. You know, so it's like some form of like skills or
Yes.
something. So which be like skills that have nothing to do with the path. So how do you like teach somebody to like have that dancing ability and everything? I maybe like, you know, it's not necessarily like a meditation thing, but I'm just curious, is the path applicable for all humans, or does it exclude somebody who have like schizophrenia or something?
Certainly, some people are going to have a more difficult time, not just schizophrenia. Right? Some people are just mentally challenged in all sorts of ways. Generally speaking, the more you can relay the path to someone, the more they can walk it and understand themselves better, feel and be in contact with more and more of what they are in every moment, the more then I would tell them to trust themselves. This comes up almost every time someone asks some question about their path or about how to do this or that. And with you, the participants in the book club, I say, you guys are on the path. Just you can just trust yourselves. Even if you make a mistake, it's very, very likely you will learn something useful from it. And in the process of letting go of external authorities and concepts of right and wrong and what's ultimately true and good, we will necessarily make some mistakes. Hopefully, most of them are just like a little trip in a dance and not falling on someone and breaking a leg.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks, Dor. I think it's very hard. And sometimes I notice that I do collide with like my schemas of like, but I do want the world to have a structure. So,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, thanks.
I want to say it's not about not having structure, right? Like if we go to a ballroom, there's the structure of we're all dancing now. That's great. We're just trying not to lose ourselves into an unconscious attachment to it such that it can never dissolve again, such that we're stuck in the virtual world where we're always dancing. And everything we have to do is only on the foundation of the dance. And then we forget that we can stop dancing if we want to eat or have a conversation. Yeah. Jonathan?
Well, it seems like you know, there are lots of high profile examples of the failure mode of this path where you know, spiritual teachers end up in sexually abusive relationships. And so I'm curious how I'm not concerned about this, but like looking at like personally, but like looking at failure modes and for the notion of like trusting oneself and one's development down the path. It seems like a common one for people in this, I don't know, form of solipsism results in injuring other people. And so I'm curious what your guidance would be on, I guess, threading that needle of trusting yourself in a way that doesn't result in you know, these common fail states.
Well, I would say that for the complete, let's say, healthy package of walking down a path, besides trusting yourself, it's always good to surround yourself with supportive sangha, people who can tell you hey, you've tripped and you're not even noticing. As well as a teacher, especially if you are also of service to other people. If you are a teacher or a therapist, it's good to always have your own teacher or therapist, someone that you can report to, someone that you can be accountable with, who might see how you're making small missteps that your students might not even notice. So you're surrounding yourself with an error correcting mechanism that's greater than you. Because until we are fully enlightened and perfected beings, which is not a thing that ever happens beyond an aspiration, there's always going to be blind spots. There are always going to be parts of our psyche that are very little bit or that we have a hard time accessing. And we can only see those with reflection from others. The issue with most of the abusive gurus and such is that they place themselves in a forever structure of I am here and I'm infallible, I am spiritually enlightened and perfected, and you are not, or some variation of this. And so I will tell you what to do. And then there's no feedback mechanism. There's no one who's capable of doing this and saying to this person, hey, look at this thing. Where's this coming from? What are you doing? And currently in the West, there's a lot of backlash around this type of hierarchy or power differential. And so it doesn't happen so much. But the issue itself, I just want to make the point, is not the hierarchy, it's not the power differential. It's just that the person at the position of more power doesn't have the type of accountability and reflection that can happen when they are themselves based in a larger sangha and have other people in a position of power that's greater or similar to them. So this is more about what are the healthy and I would say even beautiful structures of walking this path together that are beyond just your personal practice, that are beyond just going to hide in a cave and meditating forever. And in many ways, those structures and their evolution are more on the growing up side. It's like Dharma technology, or even just living a beautiful life technology, than the path itself. People who are aware of these types of possible interactions of these pitfalls, in the process of them trusting themselves, they would also listen to the signal coming up and telling them, go find other people who can mirror yourself to you. Go find a teacher. Go find a space of people who can meet you in your level of mind, in your power, and not just place yourself above everyone and even find refuge, not in the Buddha, so to speak, not in the path, but in the position, in the structure, in the virtual world where I am the teacher, I am the great one who knows everything, and everyone just does what I say.
So would you say then that someone on this path who engages in abusive behavior of any sort or injurious behavior is maybe existing in a certain state of delusion where they're not actually abiding in a higher order basis of operation?
Yeah, or there's a particular structure of mind that prevents them from seeing the pain that's being caused by their actions. And in the same way that we go about our lives and occasionally we notice that we have all sorts of habits that cause suffering, maybe after a while a person like this will be like, oh, I've hurt people, right? But generally we want, if someone's causing harm, we want to be able to intervene and at least mitigate or stop the harm, even at the cost of them not having their quote unquote natural process. But this is now we're going into a territory of skillful means and specific circumstances, right? And maybe it's useful because again, a lot of the message here is there's no ultimate answer. right? Not even always trust yourself. Even trust yourself as a pointer. Trust yourself as a, oh, let me tune into myself right now and see what I'm feeling. See what is causing some agitation. Oh, I realize I said something that hurt a person. Let me call them and tell them I'm sorry. Another time it can be like, oh, I haven't eaten enough today. Right? But the trust is more so start from what's happening here right now. And hopefully there's enough wisdom and maturity to sometimes also be like, I don't know what's going on. Let me go talk to a teacher or a friend.
Thank you.
All right, let's continue. So as we've alluded to already in our call, it's not just that we have virtual worlds that we get stuck in, but that any assumption baked into a virtual world can then become a blind, unconscious assumption. If we have one level of virtual world and then we spin up another virtual world nested inside of it. To use a color analogy, if we limit the color space, right? If we use the RGB metaphor, red, green, blue, and we have on the computer we have ranges between 0 and 255. If we take a world that's only from 0 to 128, meaning we cut out all the rest of the colors, the world nested inside will necessarily be an even more contracted space, from 0 to 64, for example. So we'll have less potential hues in our world, less dimensions that we can represent. Do you guys know, actually, this will be a good way of showing this up. Share screen. Can you see my screen? Can you all see the horse? So with every iteration, we come into a more grotesque, almost stick figure-like reality. And if you imagine a situation in your life, particularly one that's very upsetting or agitating, you can see how it boils down to something like, someone did something bad to me. This nation is full of evil people. I am the victim of this circumstance. And then every word is, rather than pointing to a rich universe full of so many causes and conditions that they're ultimately unmodelable, we have just like one tiny, contracted, stick figure-like representation of what it means to be me and what it means to be evil. And someone did something bad to someone else. Now, the other important thing that I want to point out, can you still see my screen, the chapter in the book? What's very important to understand and why this is so tricky is that unlike imagination, it's not that we're closing our eyes and then have some virtual world like a video game and then we project our little self in it and we walk around. It's not so much like that. With our eyes open and walking around the world, there's an overlay of the virtual world or the many nested virtual world on top of the sensory information that we continually receive. And it's done in a way that unless we're very aware of what's happening, and this is where this whole path and holding the higher basis of operation comes in, we will take in the overlay for reality. So I'm continuously projecting, I'm sure you're familiar with this world, on everyone and everything that we see, what's already inside of us, what we're expecting, what we're modeling. And so when we see a person or we see some object, we don't just see the object. we see what I've recently learned is called the Wilsonian affordance that's given to us. If I see my phone, pick it up, and I know I have this icon, and I have Facebook, and I have my messages, all of those potential actions are already there. And if I have some troubled relationship with my phone, if I have shame about addiction, as soon as I see the phone, the shame is already going to come up. It's projected on a phone. It's just this inert object, right? Just this rectangle with some bumps. Or if I'm hungry, like in this example here on the screen, I'm going to start having saliva be generated. My stomach start secreting all sorts of enzymes, and maybe even my vision distort a little bit if it's really bad. So the issue is we walk around a virtual reality and we project further, more nested loops of virtual realities on everything that we see based on models that are rooted in a past, that are glued together because of pain, because of experiences that we could not fully feel and integrate at the time, that we are still puppeted by. They're still governing our perception and action. And it's so sticky. It's so deeply integrated into every moment of perception that it's extremely difficult for us to extricate ourselves, or when I say ourselves, it's more the perception, the capacity to generate a world model that's free of this and see reality. The Buddhists would say, see things as they are. Yata bhuta jnana dasana. And of course, again, we run into edges of epistemology because we never see things as they are. Even when we're very free of models, this is still a model. This is still a virtual reality that the mind spins up. But they are talking about the least constructed mind, seeing things as they are. Just the bits of information. A few book club sessions ago, we were trying to do this, see just the bits, just the pixels of experience, if you recall. But without doing this process of continuously seeing what the glue that's holding the model together and feeling it through, integrating it and letting go of the compulsive model, we cannot get to what's possible. We cannot, in terms of letting go all the way, in terms of experiencing freshly arising sensory phenomena. So anytime you run into a person that you dislike or that you have some opinion about, consider that it's not the person, it's your own mind. Your own crazy mind is coming pre-assembled with opinions. There is nothing in reality that's storing a memory of that person. There's nothing in reality or about that person that's innately annoying or upsetting or even lovable. It's all you placing all of those layers of meaning on top of that person in the moment. Every time you wake up in the morning and you conceive and you have some agitation, you have some sense of, oh no, I can't, not this again. There's nothing in reality that's there that's agitating you. It is the model. And in the context of everything that we've talked about so far, the path is twofold. It's aligning on nicer models. And this is where the Dharma comes in with the Brahma Viharas and non-zero sum and love and so on. We start aligning, collecting the mind around nicer models. And then using the collected mind to go deeper and deeper into the assumptions, into the karma, into the pains that with a more contracted mind, we have a hard time experiencing, integrating, and dissolving. In some sense, that's the whole path. And once we get to the ground floor, or as we get closer and closer to the ground floor, we have more and more freedom about which models to spin up. What sort of beautiful dance do I want to have? Versus how do I navigate this minefield of our reality strewn with all sorts of ideas about how horrible it is stemming from my formative years and all the pains that I've not felt. Let's stop here again and ask some questions and make comments.
So is the notion about finding more choice, like I can see a tiger walk onto my front porch and appreciate the sensory input that I'm getting and accept the tiger on its own terms, yet at the same time having the pattern recognition like ready to go that, oh, this is a threat, I need to respond appropriately, but having the conscious ability to notice when I'm employing my pattern recognition rather than it being unconscious and reflexive.
Mm-hmm. It can still be reflexive, right? You see a tiger, you want to run, but you can enjoy seeing the tiger and you can enjoy running and you can even enjoy the fear. You can even enjoy being eaten, even as you'll choose not to.
Okay, so I have a question, but I think I also have a question about what you just finished saying right now. This thing about you could enjoy being eaten. I don't know if that is only theoretically true. Sometimes I feel that that's something that almost borders with like bypassing when they're like, okay, I have this pain, I'm being eaten by a lion, and it's like, oh, but I'm gonna enjoy like the pain and the how my I don't know what I would enjoy from it. So I'm like
Yeah.
almost like that seems like is that like that almost like some things that are said like that feel to me a bit like theoretical.
In a situation like this, you don't have to think, oh, let me enjoy being eaten by a lion. That can be a type of dissociation and escape. It can also be very skillful practice, right? But the type of being eaten by a lion enjoyment that I'm talking about is the one where you're already so free, so unencumbered that even that can be enjoyable. Of course, you're not just going to lie there and let them eat you. You're going to fight first. Pretty sure most people are going to fight or try to escape. But
Yeah.
that doesn't have to be something that's horrible and painful or you know what I would say it's hard to choose the words here. It can even be horrible, horrifying, terrifying, and still blissful, enjoyable. What an experience. What a ride.
Okay, I see. I'm like definitely not there. But that was like not my original question. That was kind of my reaction to that comment. But my question was that, and I think this has to do with what we were discussing at the beginning about like what is actually just your mind and what is like the actual reality, what is happening, whatever that means. That sometimes I do when you said that you wake up and you're just dreading your day or like dreading the state of your life. Like I've had those experiences, and then there are like particular things that I can pinpoint as like this is my current life circumstance, and this is or like this is the story of me in this circumstance, and it feels very like tangible and almost kind of like if you don't admit it, like, oh, a lion is about to eat me, and if I don't see it, then I will get eaten, right? So there is this like, okay, I don't like this situation, and I need to see it, and it's like very painful, and that is going to allow me to like, of course, like run away from it or like fight or do something, but that is also this like kind of like dread of your own existence, like, oh, this is happening, and I think, yeah, and there's where I'm stuck into like I don't see I see that that's like it's my mind and probably a lot is being triggered, and like there is probably some level of pain that is from the situation and some level of pain that is just a trigger. But if I see it as just a trigger, then I don't respond to the actual threat. So, but if I feel the threat, I'm still gonna be in distress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think there is like what do we do when we are feeling that the current circumstances are really dreading or painful and are actually happening? As I said, there's like actual factual circumstances that are happening and they're hard to change, at least immediately. And how do we find the peace within that?
That's the question, right? I'm sure you're all familiar with that saying, God, give me the wisdom to tell to tell what I can change, and what is it? The peace to accept what I can't, something like that. Sorry, I'm butchering this. I think you know what I'm pointing to.
Mm.
So again, there's no hard and fast rule. Like sometimes you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh fuck this job, I'm gonna quit.
Mm.
Right? Other times you're like, oh, I really need this job. It's the only way for me to sustain myself. And so I'm gonna do the best that I can to accept it, to see how to reduce the frictions, to see how I can enjoy it more.
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing here is not dissociating from reality and accepting everything as beautiful and great and amazing as a way of becoming passive. It's reducing the friction that's originating not from the circumstances, but from our existing fixed intentions and outdated models that are compulsively spun up all the time. Maybe I only hate my job because I'm projecting that my boss is like my domineering mother. If I let that go, suddenly I can just become her friend.
Yeah.
Right? And even as I'm saying this, it's very binary, right? Reality is very rarely binary. Probably that the manager is also a bit of a pain in the ass, even before I'm projecting something on her. Maybe.
Mhm.
But if I take off the projection and knowing that she's still a bit of a pain in the ass, she's still aggressive, she's still domineering, I can come and speak to her about it, not from a perspective of mom, but hey, let's generate a relationship that's better for us.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, and I think, yeah, in some way, then like I think if you would like feel all the things that you're feeling that are on the way, or like kind of like dismantle them, then you will just actually see the problem and see whatever you have to do or not to do. And if the thing is just accepted, I think there's a long, painful road to just accepting something. Then you have to go through different waves of grief. But also even if like what you're trying to accept would require you to see so much of your layers of construction to feel through them, it's like it would require me every morning to just sit down and like go through like all the emotions that I haven't been willing to feel for probably like a couple of hours a day minimum, and
Yeah, we
just
call
like
that meditation.
no, aside from I feel like aside from the meditation, because things sometimes just go through rage or through grief or everything, and then maybe I could start meditating, and then I would be like already like noon, you know. So
Yeah.
just to like be able to, okay, now I have a clear picture of what is actually going on.
Yeah, a lot of my life, that's what I did. And I would say, unless I do this process in the morning, I don't even want to get out and interface with the world. For many years, that's what I did. And then um, the word I'm looking for, like the upside, the consolation here is that as you do it more, you start cleaning out all of this depth, all of the pain that's stuck in the system, and you become more and more proficient in doing that. So it's faster and more comprehensive every time you do it.
Mm. Because it's kind of never ending closet, because that's the problem sometimes that I am like find myself impatient to do this again, because it's like we have been here so many times. I'm just like, I don't want to, like, it's kind of like again feeling this and that.
Yeah.
I'm just like, it seems like the old things again, and it's feels like it's just there's never like there's so many layers of depth, you know?
Yep. And for a dose of optimism, I'll just say before we move on that I have a teacher who recently told me that over the past 2 years, he's been triggered for a total of 3 seconds.
Okay.
It is
Okay.
possible. All right. I think there's one more important thing to discuss in terms of the content of the chapter, which is so this really ties it all together. This is the image that I have here at the end of the chapter. Let's pull it up. Can you all see? There's the whole Buddhist thesis that I'm also including here, but we're going to stay with just the modern words. So contact, the first in the chain of cognition of this whole process of creating worlds, is with sensory perception. We just have sensory bits streaming in. So from sight, smell, and all of the other senses. From those, our mind starts doing its pattern recognition. It starts arranging this pure bitmap into patterns through a process that we call cognition. And this is the process that also generates qualia, because along with the cognition, along with, oh, this is a chair. Oh, this is my abusive husband. There's also a feeling. And a feeling or valence is, generally speaking, neutral, pleasant, or unpleasant. But without the cognition, there is no feeling. Without first having a sense of, oh, this is the lion that's trying to kill me, bad, or this is the woman who's going to make love to me, good, there's no good or bad. There's no, not even a concept of good and bad, there's no feeling. So we have qualia, we have a cognition plus feeling of some sensory bits, and then we start coordinating activity based on that. Meaning, when we have a bunch of those cognition plus feelings, we create a whole scene. That scene that we perceive in terms of a bunch of objects and a self and what it can do about it is a type of activity. We can think about it, that's an activity. We can talk about it, that's an activity. Or we can act, move our bodies, change something in the physical world. It's also an activity. And then what happens is, in the next cycle of this, and this is the core loop, right? This is like a contraction, a reduced version of the 12 links of dependent origination. In the next cycle of the loop, we don't take sensory bits in, rather we use the previous objects or the whole of the perception and take that in as the contact. We just call that mental contact now. And now, instead of operating on sensory bits, we are mostly seeing our existing objects, and then we start cognizing and feeling based on our existing interpretation. Right? So this is the core mechanics, the Lego pieces of how we end up with a whole virtual world, which we're then stuck in and then loops in place. Again, this whole trick here is this question: are mental contacts, right? This next layer of cognition, of processing, seen from a view recognizing fundamental consciousness. I see it still says pure consciousness here. If it's transparent, right, you can see this sort of box that's the cognition. So I can see both the box and the bits. We are in fundamental consciousness. We're in nirvana. And next layers of iterations are going to be much more likely to arise in alignment with it, with its operations, with its organizing principles. If it's opaque, if we see the entire structure as one bit, then we will continue constructing on top of that, and we're stuck in samsara. And this next one is essentially the same thing, but I'm just stacking it together. We can talk about the layer of pure experience versus being lost in meaning. in maps, inside maps, inside maps. And before I send us back, I just also want to make the possibly somewhat triggering claim that every feeling, everything that feels good, let me take that back a little bit. Most things that feel good are the propaganda of the small self. If I have a positive feeling about a person, about an activity, about my new job, it is because in the world simulation, my small self, meaning the simulated self, my reduced sense of what I am in the world model, has already identified that the pattern that I'm seeing corresponds with what in the model is good. So everything that I feel good about, and particularly the types of things that I'm called to do because I have an assumption that they will feel good, are a way for the model, for the small self in the model, to hold a carrot in front of our eyes so that we go forward toward it. Likewise with pain, with something that feels bad. So the model of our small self in the virtual world, within virtual world that we spin up, is a constant hamster wheel of samsara, where we have carrots and sticks, and we run around inside of those virtual worlds, hitting ourselves or manipulating ourselves like a ministry of truth to go after or go away from virtual bullshit. And that is samsara. Before we go into the questions and discussion, I just want to say, when we deconstruct all of this, there is a type of bliss or joy, the type that is often referred to as Sat Chit Ananda, the bliss of consciousness being as it is, where the mind is just collected without being collected on a particular carrot or stick. And there's an innate good feeling in that, which also makes it even less likely that we'll be tricked by some samsaric carrot. All right. Boris, I think you were first.
My question is about the feeling versus cognition, or that arises with the cognition. Is cognition always conscious, or
No.
Okay.
Linus?
Yeah. Give me a second. Right. You said almost everything that feels good is because it's good in the model. Is that because there's things that are like innately feel good, like eating something when you're hungry, urinating when your bladder is full, an orgasm, and the model is like you're basically expecting those things to be there in more abundance or more intensity. If you get a new job, you think, oh, this buys me money. With money, I can buy all these nice things and I can have all these nice experiences. Or maybe you don't think it like in words, but you feel it. Basically, my question is, what are the things that feel good or that are not because they're good in the model?
So there's a way that even the feel good of eating something nice or peeing and emptying the bladder and so on are a model. It's just one that's baked into your physiology. And in the chapter, I talk about how even an amoeba that moves itself based on a gradient, a chemical gradient pointing at food, already in some sense has a rudimentary model that's baked into its receptor and actuator. And we just have a much bigger model that also allows us to start simulating various approaches and what the best way to go about is and so on. And I'm not saying this to say that's also a carrot in a virtual world, right? Because some of the goodness that's available to the virtual world relies on squeezing pathways of our neurology that mimic what we would get if we actually ate the carrot, or if we actually had sex, or whatever it is. In the same way that the pain signals, or the extreme agitation and threat, sense of threat and danger to survival, relies on the model pressing on the pathways that really indicate a lion's chasing me right now. Right? So I'm not saying this to take away the fundamental, this is pleasurable or painful. In the technical terms in biology would be aversive and appetitive. Appetitive from appetite, right? I'm eating something and my physiology likes it, and so I'm going to do it more, right? Sometimes you can even do that without it being pleasurable. It's just the basic instinct. So I'm not saying this to take away and say that don't trust anything, right? We're still within the realm of trust yourself, and later I'll say something about why it's still useful to go after the carrots. But that's one level, the model that's baked into the physiology, which is trustable, right? You don't want to hold on and not pee and have your bladder explode because you're like, oh no, it's just the carrot. Go pee. The second layer, or the deeper layer, is of the Satchit Ananda realm. It's pleasure. The words stop making sense here because it's a type of bliss, pleasure, good feeling that's beyond the standard carrot. And that one is by itself. It's not pleasure about something. It's not pleasure because I think I'm going to have sex. It's not the pleasure of sex. I don't have to do anything for that. It's the fundamental state of being. And then that bliss remains whether I'm being eaten by a lion or I'm having sex. Of course, unless in that moment there's like, oh my God, I'm being eaten by a lion, that the small self is doing inside the virtual world. And then, oh, that's bad because I am going to die.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say that the lion biting into you will not have a pain signal. The basic error signal is telling you, pull your foot out and run away. And it's not going to be something you want to experience more of. Very likely, again, you want to run away. But it doesn't mean you're going to suffer. It doesn't mean you're going to freak out about it more than necessary to just spin up the nervous system and physiology and get out of there.
Yeah, it's the two arrows, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is like when I meditate on pain, and the headache dissolves into bliss, and it's like, yeah, I'd rather not have the headache, but if I engage with it really fully, it feels good.
Yeah. That's where everything fully experienced is bliss comes from.
I feel like my current mental model of it is alignment of expected sensory input with the sensory input, and like feeling the emotions is integrating it, and feeling it fully is integrating it fully. And so like if I have a goal, I try to align the world to that goal. Like I imagine some state and then I try to align the sensory input to that state I'm imagining. And so I'm like lessening the difference between the world and my model. But also, if I accept reality fully as it is, I'm also lessening the difference between the world and the model, right? But from a different point. And
Right.
so, and it's like, I don't know, maybe if you have a chiropractic adjustment and you feel that really nice crack, like it feels really like you're getting aligned. I don't know, it feels really good.
Yeah.
There's something else your answer brought up, but I'll
Yeah.
let Sophie ask her question.
There's also the third part of my answer that I want to mention, which is even with this harsh, grotesque interpretation of our chasing carrots and sticks, there is value in correctly identifying the type of carrot that more and more of us, or all of us, are aligned on, because that generally tends to represent some of our deepest karma. And then fulfilling that karma getting the carrot, so to speak, right? I want to be famous. I want to be recognized as this or that. I want to be wealthy. I want to have a wife. I want to the things that we're really driven by. Sometimes people would call this a soul mission, right? What did my soul come here to this planet to do? It's a poetic way of saying this. Would still feel very good, very fulfilling, very satisfying. And I would not advise not doing that just because of recognition. Oh, but it's just a carrot. Because there's a sense, in some sense, everything is just a carrot, everything that we do. Never mind that there's a state of Satchit Ananda. The thing that we are moved by, even if it's no longer personal conditioning, you could say is the conditioning of the universe, the conditioning of society. And as it moves through us and moves us, the fulfillment is still something we want to go after. It's more so the carrots of of doom scrolling. It's like carrot, 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 right? Or the stick of hating a particular group or someone that I'm always like. Those are the sort of things to notice because I'm just projecting some old junk on someone. Yeah. Again, there's no ultimate. Never chase a carrot. Chasing carrot is bad, right?
Yeah, you
It's
cannot
all a
stop.
matter of greed and wisdom and.
I think.
Sophie. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I'm sorry, it came up again. So this is like really closely aligned to what I like insights from I gather from the meditative path. I think for a while I was really disoriented by it because I saw, well, the carrot is like the meaning only exists in a certain context, and so there is not this absolute meaning and not the absolute fulfillment of reaching a goal. And then I read some Nietzsche, and I was like, okay, yeah, I should not be ashamed of my natural drives, and I can integrate them, and that was quite good. But then also it's like, yeah, okay, you can't only live for your natural drives. I mean, yeah. And then I felt, okay, now I'm stuck in this place where I feel stuck sometimes in this paradoxical place of knowing I want to set myself a nice goal that motivates me, that drives me towards like things that collaborating with others and like being a good force in the world. And I also know this goal is just completely arbitrary. It is just a carrot, and I'm not going to eat it because once I get there, the carrot will like have dissolved into the actual situation. And yeah, I don't
Well,
know.
that is the eating of it.
But it's not the carrot.
Yep. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm just having fun with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's not really a question there, just an expression of, well, I feel heard now. Thank you.
It is good to start with the attitude, even knowing this, of I am running on a samsaric hamster wheel after a virtual carrot of my own design, and that's okay. That is the starting point of all practice. Sophie.
Yeah, so this is really fun. It's been a long time since I have been really, really confused when thinking about Buddhism. But I feel like my mind is just spinning. And I think maybe I'm just too much in my mind, or maybe I'm just like about to understand something that I haven't before, but I'm just like, oh, virtual worlds, reality, carrots, it's like everything is like that. And I think the question that came to my mind was like, okay, so what you were saying at the beginning, just trust yourself. And I'm like, how do you trust yourself when when your mental models are not yet aligned to Dharmic principles? So you have just created a bunch of fiction. And the reason why I think borrow this internal confusion is because I'm like, I don't know what is fact from fiction right now. I look at in my inner world, I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. So how do you trust yourself is, I don't know, like it's like, if I don't know what's going on really.
Yeah. The analogy that comes up for me is when I ride my motorcycle, very twisty roads where I don't see what's happening after the next corner, and I'm not sure about the condition of the road. It's not a racetrack, and a gazillion other consideration to take into account. Part of the way that I'm trusting myself is also trusting that I know how to take the unknowns into account. And then maybe I slow down or don't lean in so much. Right? And that changes even time and time again in the exact same corner. Because sometimes it's wet and sometimes it's dark and sometimes there's more cars on the road and so on. And so part of trusting yourself and learning to trust yourself more and more is also knowing your limitations, knowing where you're more likely to get caught up, knowing where you're often triggered, and then slowing down, or putting more assurances in place, or enlisting other people as allies to tell you how you're doing. There's an infinite range of creative possibilities for how to navigate this.
Yeah, I spoke to what you said at the beginning of like just knowing when to ask for help, because in some situations I know I'm like, this is like, I feel like, oh, this is really what my inner, like kind of like my heart wants, and I almost feel like this sense of direction, and many times I'm so right, and others I was like, as you were saying, you were so right in whatever that the coordinator of the time took over, put a carrot, and it felt as I was like really in full alignment. So I had the experience of full alignment, and then I was like, oh, that was so off. Like everything around the story was a projection, and I'm like, whoa. And then this recognition of like, oh, I just made a mistake. Even though I was like trusting myself, and I know in the end, like, well, I learned something from it and everything, but then you start having at least knowing the places where you're hesitant. Like, next time I'm like, okay, I feel like really self-righteous, for example. And it's like, oh, it feels really real,
Yeah.
I feel I'm right, but yeah.
Yeah. And again, it's okay to make mistakes, right? I like the saying, if you're not at least a little bit embarrassed by how you were a month ago, you're not growing fast enough.
Mm.
All right, let's leave some time for inquiry, because we have some pregnant ones today. So really want to use them to tie everything together. So the first one is, and let's see, we have 10 minutes. We're going to take 2 minutes to contemplate and then do some sharing for each of those, maybe a minute and a half. Okay, so first one is, what stories about yourself or your life persist at all times? An example can be, life is hard. Life is suffering. I am useless. I am amazing. Does anyone want to share? This can be very personal.
What came up for me was that something like bad things are going to happen, and I somehow have to brace for it, be ready for them to happen, or something like this.
And how does having this perception, embracing for bad things, create bad things? Don't have to answer, but something to contemplate.
I need to be useful for people to want me in their life, provide some value. And
As you're saying this, I also want you to notice, like tune into your body and see how it makes you feel to say that.
tightened up, constrained,
Mm-hmm.
pushing down. Because the situation matters more than what's inside, always.
And what's the emotion?
this mixture of sadness, anger, like, yeah, definitely. Just a strong, big no, like.
Mm. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, let's move to the other one. So again, we take about a minute and a half. And what are some major assumptions that you filter all of perception through? An example I have here is all men are assholes. And it's generally of this format. All X is Y. All X should be Y. If you jump in and share, I invite you to also do the same thing. Really tune into your body, center in your heart as you say this. Feel the impact of saying this on you and even on us if you have this capacity, how we respond to it. Anyone? Going once, going twice. All right. So I want you to take this as a practice that you can do anywhere before you go into any any situation in life that you may have some hard feelings about, or even just generally waking up in the morning. See what beliefs wake up with you. See what virtual models sometimes even wake up and create a bubble before you. They spin up before you even regain consciousness in the morning. And you can have this inquiry. What are my limiting beliefs? What has to be a certain way? How am I? And feel what happens when you acknowledge that. If there's tension, if there's sadness, if there's anger, if there's joy. Once we identify the limiting belief, this persistent world model, and we feel the emotion that is its immediate implication, and then also go deeper in inquiry and ask another question. I'm just going to leave you with this one. Who gave me this belief? Where did I get it from? Maybe it's from parents or siblings or school or culture or a TV show. And see what it would be like to give that belief back. Like, oh, I don't need this belief. Of course, if you want to, you don't have to. If you want to have this belief. And as you give it back, you can ask yourself what belief I would like to have instead. You can ask yourself, what would I have to feel if I did not have this belief? And in those two questions, we have those two basic movements we were talking about. One, make nicer models. Two, wash off, peel away any karma, any model that's compulsive. Which is what happens when we feel the pain or we feel the emotion that's under the model, under the limiting belief. In some sense, that's the whole path. So simple.
So you mean we're done? We completed the path?
For today.
Okay.
A lot to integrate today. Right. Feel free to continue discussing or asking questions in the comments. And if there's something of this that you want to explore more in depth in a one-on-one, you're very welcome to get on the calendar. And again, if there's no time that's available, just message me.